It's the last day of February, and as we prepare for March, there are several things on the higher term timeframes that do suggest things might indeed get worse from here. Of course, short-term bounces are very much possible, but I do want to revisit a lot of the higher term timeframes and explain how things have changed since February began, most importantly, because now this market cycle is taking a different turn, and I suspect that the next few months minimum is going to be a bit of a change of pace here. Anyways, as we get into it, I'm going to bring back an indicator here, something that we haven't spoken about in a long time, and I'll explain why, but it is the accumulation and distribution indicator, which has been very, very accurate in the past in getting market cycle tops for Bitcoin whenever we see the slope change while it is in the green zone. So if I mark off these areas where we actually did see that slope change, you'll notice that those were essentially the high or very close to the high with these vertical bars here. Oops, sorry, the slope change happened right there, and on this one happened right there. I apologize. But yeah, you do see that the slope change has generally correlated with the changing of the market cycle, actually. Of course, it's not going to be perfect like we saw in this last one right here. When the slope change actually did happen, Bitcoin did technically make a slightly new all-time high, but in terms of the all-time high, in terms of price relativity, the all-time high was essentially there, $65,000 versus $69,000. You can see in this current cycle, it hasn't really been operating in that same fashion, which is why I haven't spoken about it in a long time, because we did see that the monthly accumulation distribution turned down back in most recently in November. And that was when Bitcoin broke out. So I guess that actually kind of was a signal in hindsight, although Bitcoin did trade higher from there. But of course, just blindly taking that signal, we would have missed, a good portion of these moves. And of course, right now, it does continue down. So I do kind of look at this. It probably should be looked at in like a moving average terms where it gets smoothed out a little bit. I suspect that would probably fix these issues long term. And we could continue using this. But yeah, it is heading down here, especially at the end of February. That is going to imply and really confirm that this is distribution for the past 1, 2, 3 months now. So that changes a lot of things for me. And I have been seeing some people across the social media venues, especially Twitter, suggesting that, February where what is accumulation. I think that this is very obvious evidence that this is not, especially with Bitcoin coming back down below the all-time high month's low. So that would be January, and looking very, 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 very likely that it's going to close below there as well. But as we get into it, I do want to reference a few other things here. Monthly stochastic momentum is, it seems like almost a shoo-in right now that it will indeed cross the downside, assuming that Bitcoin closes this month out, which again ends today below 92,700. That would not just confirm momentum coming to the downside, but also bearish divergence on the stochastic momentum oscillator, and also losing the critical zone, which is typically a sign that, the real downside move is about to occur. Now, this of course is barring today's close. Like, what if Bitcoin rallied above $93,000? Okay, I changed my opinion on that. But as long as Bitcoin's below 93, you're going to hear me take on a more bearish tone. We started to take on a more bearish tone. What was it? Actually, fuck, man, now I forget. What was it this past week? Yeah, something like that. I remember on Sunday we were looking at the shitcoins, or I should say the big four. They're not shitcoins, they're the big four. And most of them were looking like, Jesus, it's not fucking good. Anyways, that is going to be in combination with the bi-monthly chart, which is also closing tonight. So we got the monthly and the bi-monthly. And the bi-monthly chart is also very likely to see momentum turn to the downside for the first time since May of 2023, assuming that Bitcoin closes below about $91,000. The reason why I look at this as very relevant is because the last few times that we've seen these crosses happen to the downside, these have also correlated incredibly well with market highs. We're talking about 2014 pretty much to the dot. We're talking about 2017 again to the T right there. 2021 not necessarily exactly on track. There was another bi-monthly that did make again that new high, but not not much compared to the prior all-time high. Again, in terms of actual price, that effectively was the high. And this one turning down right here, it really does make me consider that this next segment of the market cycle can take a long time, multiple months as this does cool off. How far does Bitcoin go to the downside within there? Well, we'll get into that soon here. We'll get into general targets for this move to the downside. But I also do want to go over the monthly RSI. Again, we spoke about it yesterday and the day before. Bearish divergence is all but guaranteed at this point for multiple drives. And traditionally, the target that I like to have on that is somewhere around that yellow moving average, which is a 21 exponential. That would put Bitcoin, at least somewhere down around $70,000, give or take a little bit. Essentially in alignment with the last major local high that we saw from March of last year. So basically 1 year away from that, and Bitcoin reversing again, crazy shit. Anyways, this is all second to the real analysis. As we pointed out yesterday, the bear moon has indeed occurred, and Bitcoin coming down even more. For fuck's sake, man, I was definitely looking for Bitcoin to bounce, somewhere around this low $80,000 number. I think it still probably does, to be honest, but holy shit, just can't catch a fucking break right here. Even coming off of the daily 200 simple. So now let's get into areas of interest for the downside. And then I'll go over the criteria that I'm looking for to, I guess once again, consider long-term long positions. So looking at the weekly right here, we do see bearish divergence on the weekly RSI, but more importantly, I guess just as important, it does look like the weekly is very likely to test at least down to that green moving average. That is a 55 exponential moving average, technically at 74,350. Of course, that is also almost in a direct alignment with that March high from last year. So some good confluence within that. Does Bitcoin test down there first before trying for a bounce, or does it try for a bounce where it's currently at? Before coming, down around there, that I don't fucking know. That, I would have expected to happen yesterday. Obviously didn't happen. So that, that kind of destroys that idea. But of course, when we go over to the very, very high term timeframes, keeping in mind that the quarterly is not closing this month, but next month, it does seem extremely likely that Bitcoin is going to have a reconnect with that red moving average, as it typically does on the quarterly timeframe with nearly each and every close throughout the full history of Bitcoin. And that is at around 72,500. Of course, if we go to the bi-monthly chart, we see something relatively similar at around 74,000. Yeah, basically the same number, and also would be good for a reconnect. So, these things likely do get met. Does that mean that Bitcoin is going to be full on bull after hitting around these regions? I wouldn't say that, but I would be expecting like a very big bounce, probably maybe even back above $90,000. But yeah, I'm still not willing to say that this cycle is done, or at least that this cycle is like for sure done. But I do remain with what I said, earlier this week that, with this price action, things have certainly changed, and I don't really expect Bitcoin to be in a position to even, put in a threat towards a new all-time high for the next several months. I expect that this is going to take at best some time to kind of work itself off. Anyways, also, yes, I almost forgot to mention this. Also of great interest here as we come into the monthly closure is, again, the monthly HPDR. I think we spoke about this on Monday or Tuesday. It is, again, it seems like pretty much a certainty at this point. Going to close below as a rejection of the median, and off of a read like this, I do have to be looking somewhere down around the 38.2 level. That would be just below $70,000, to be fair. Now it will adjust when we do get the new monthly open for March, so we'll see if that adjusts up or down, but it shouldn't deviate too much, I would suspect. But that will be a major area of interest for me in March. Very, 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 very likely. Perhaps after a little bit of a bounce attempt. But yeah, that would essentially undo the whole November rally. And just a weird thing here in markets, and you can tell me if you agree with this or disagree with this, but something that I think a lot of people have observed, myself included, is that when you have a move that is catalyzed by news, and this one was catalyzed by the election, right? The election news, they almost always get what's it called, like the full unraveling effect, the full what's a fucking word that I'm looking for? The full comeback. What I'm trying to say is that almost always they come back to where they started from. And yeah, that would be, very low 70s to very upper 60s, kind of where I'm leaning towards right now. So here's the next thing that I want to bring about. Now, this one's very far away. This one's like not super relevant right now, but it does help, at least in my opinion, very likely get around the, yes, okay, there we go. Does very likely get around the range, I would suspect, for most of March. Maybe after a little bit more downside. Again, looking at the daily here for Bitcoin, we have 3 moving averages on the block. 377 down here at about 74,500. Does Bitcoin make a move down there first before bouncing, or does it try for a bounce off of the 200 simple? One of my rules in trading, as we went over yesterday, is when the daily comes back down to that 200 simple moving average, which is the white moving average right here, on the first test after a long time of being away from it, which this one's been away for many months, it's almost always guaranteed for a bounce. Almost always. So far, there has been a slight bounce attempt, but I'd really be looking for like a decent bounce attempt. But with the way that things are looking right now, does Bitcoin make a move down here first and then try for the bounce? And we see like a massive move intraday, and Bitcoin closes around 80,000 bucks again, and then goes for a March bounce before rolling over. Again, I don't have strong opinions on this, although I do have to remain, I guess, more bearish. Again, in the medium term, the short term, there is some bullish divergence, I believe, starting to form here, or at least there should be, or at least I would really hope so. But 4-hour RSI, yeah, very likely going to put in a third drive of bullish divergence, making obviously much new lows with price action alongside higher lows on the 4-hour RSI. So we are seeing a loss of momentum here to the downside between this low, and this low. Or this potential low. I mean, it hasn't been really a low just yet. But for right now, we still don't even have a short-term reversal on that. But there are signs in the background, which is why I do think, I would be leaning more towards a bounce first. Looking at 4-hour BBWP, we're seeing the double extremes. Yes, it can stay up on the second stint at extreme levels for, a little bit of time, but I suspect no more than a day. And then at that point, you're very, 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 very likely to get a mean reversion play. I would say, however, that Bitcoin getting back above 90,000 bucks is going to be quite difficult here. But, I could see, a test just to 90,000 bucks, I suppose. But of course, it depends first how low Bitcoin gets on this move, and then we can kind of come back with, areas of interest for a bounce target. Now, with that in mind, I did want to bring up 2 major moving averages here on the daily time frame. The red moving average is a 50 simple. The white moving average is a 200 simple. These are the golden cross and death cross moving averages. And generally, when we see these cross, they do lead to long-term moves. Not always. We can see that, the death crosses recently have not been, they have been pretty bad, but they haven't been fatal for this market cycle. But I don't know if concern is the right word or not, but what I would be cognizant of is that if as long as Bitcoin is below the 200 simple, which it is right now, to be fair, these will get pulled closer together, and there is a potential for a cross. Now, this would very likely take a long time, to be fair. This probably wouldn't even happen until April, maybe even May, if it is going to happen. But even when that does happen, that would also make me really consider that the market cycle has indeed ended. For now, I'm just looking at this as a major top with, again, multiple months of sideways and down, or probably down first and then sideways for multiple months, I suppose, would be a little more accurate. But yeah, it's going to take its time. And for right now, I really want to see Bitcoin close above the 200 simple today, just so it can play out a range between the 50 and the 200. That would probably be most of March before rolling over, I suspect. But yeah, anyways, I think I have hit nearly everything I wanted to get on this one. We'll end on this as well. Actually, we'll end on 2 more things. I just want to remind myself here that we're seeing all higher term time frame momentum continue to the downside. We already went over the 2-month, and we already went over the monthly, both of which are extremely likely to turn down at the end of today. The bi-weekly, which closes on Sunday, I believe. Yeah, it does close on Sunday, or CME will close today, is showing downside momentum as long as Bitcoin's below 100,000 bucks. The weekly downside as long as Bitcoin's below 104,000 bucks. 10-day time time frame, down as long as Bitcoin's below 98,500. 5-day time frame, down as long as Bitcoin's below 95,500. 3-day time frame, also down as long as Bitcoin's below 90,000. The 2-day time frame, also down as long as Bitcoin's below 86,000. And even the daily time frame is still positioned to the downside here as long as Bitcoin's below 89,000 bucks. Now, I would say that the daily is like, I mean, it's pretty fucking beat up here. Like, it really wouldn't take too much to get a bounce, which is why I do hesitate to really lean in one direction in the short term. But the higher term timeframes, do represent the medium and long term. And I do suspect that, there is very likely going to be more downside, maybe before the day it finishes, but very likely in March, I suspect. And this is the last thing that I'll leave you with on this video. I want to reiterate, and I'm going to continue to reiterate my criteria that I'd be looking for at minimum to entertain the possibility that Bitcoin has a macro low end. One, I need to see, whoops, let me go over here. One, I absolutely need to see bullish divergence on the daily RSI. As of right now, we are witnessing the lowest levels of daily RSI since August of 2023. But the problem with this is that there is no divergence here. This would actually imply that once Bitcoin makes a low, it will actually bounce and then come back down below that low. And at that point, you'd have the minimum conditions for just 2 drives of bullish divergence. And for, a big low like this, I think 3 probably is better, but at least two. Now here is, I guess, the sort of nice thing about this, with it getting this low, is that it's going to be very difficult to keep the daily RSI this low, but the opportunity is not here just yet. And that needs to be in combination, or at least close to, the daily hash ribbons indicator. As I've been saying for a while now, this signal is unfront runnable. You cannot front run it. If you front run it, you risk, well, you already fucking know what you risk because you've seen exactly what happened, even when it was so extremely close to actually giving the buy signal, which was right here, not even that long ago, last Saturday. If it doesn't officially cross and you don't officially see it confirm, it's a fucking massive gamble. And just for reference here, that was when Bitcoin was at 96,000 bucks. It has since gone down more than $25,000. Wait, is that right? Holy shit, that is right. Wait, no, $15,000. Jesus Christ, I'm retarded. Sorry, jet lag is really getting to me. I can assure you of that. Maybe it's not so long until it is 25,000, but yeah, right now just 15,000 bucks since that signal did fire, or was close to firing off. But yeah, that's where I'll leave things on today's video. Again, we'll continue to update this as time goes on. Just kind of wrap it up in the very, very short term. I really don't have strong opinions. I don't think it would take too much to get Bitcoin in a bounce, but with the way things are looking right now, it is fucking ugly. But when Bitcoin does bounce, I would be expecting something probably into the mid-deep 80s. The question is, does Bitcoin go down to 74 first and then bounce, or does it try for a bounce here? If you see Bitcoin on the daily close close to the, let me go back here. If you see it, if you see today close somewhere around about 82,000 bucks, I'd say that's my signal for a bounce first and then roll over later. But again, long term and medium term, things are looking down. I mean, they are certainly looking down here. So again, just reiterating my thoughts on this cycle. I'm not willing to call this like a macro cycle top just yet. I do think it is a major top. I do think that this is going to take many months of, probably at least like another month of downside and then many months of sideways before it is resolved. And there is maybe another try to the upside, I don't know, later this year. But yeah, that's where I'll leave things for today. Hopefully that was in some way helpful. As always, if you find this content valuable, consider like subscribing, because this is being recorded live. You can actually even join in on the live stream, which is all sorts of fun. Okay, that's where we'll end it.